Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Through Africa. It is still me, your host, Mercy Bamubala, and today we're joining you again live from our studios here in Ankara, Turkey, to talk about Africa and everything that relates to it. On this show, we talk about education, politics, the health of the country, agriculture, education, and a lot more. Now, today we'll be talking about the relationship between Turkey and Africa. We know that this relationship has been one that has stood for a long time, and we'll be focusing mainly on the trade and the bilateral relations between these two countries. We have one country and a continent. Now, to talk more about this topic, I'll be speaking with two very important guests, Assistant Professor Burak Nedim Aktash. All right, I'll just start directly with Assistant Professor Burak. How would you describe, the current relations trade relations actually, between Turkey and Africa? We know that Africa is a continent and then Turkey stands as a country in the Middle East. What is the current state of trade between these two entities in general?
Right. Okay, thanks for having us. First of all, when we talk about Turkey-Africa relations, the first thing to highlight is how much this relationship has grown in the last 2 decades, actually. In the early 2000s, Turkey's trade volume with Africa was only around $5 billion, but today that number has exceeded $40 billion. So it is still rising. And that shows a clear and strong commitment from both Turkey and African countries to build long-term economic partnerships. Let's talk about the reasons behind it. One of the biggest reasons for this growth is Turkey's strategic expansion into Africa's trade and investment landscape. Turkey has positioned itself as a key player in Africa's infrastructure development, manufacturing, energy, as well as digital transformation. Also, Turkish companies are active in many African countries, that just in major cities, but also not in major cities, but also in developing regions. For example, let's take the example of construction sector. Turkey is among the top players in Africa in construction. I personally have already been to a couple of countries in Africa for construction projects, and I can tell that the sector is very promising, and there are extensive opportunities in construction. If you travel across the continent, you will find Turkish companies building airports, highways, bridges, even entire residential areas. Take an example of international airport in Senegal or the international free trade zone in Djibouti. These projects are not just about business. They directly contribute also to Africa's economic welfare, growth, connectivity. Another key area we must mention is manufacturing and industrial investment. Turkish businesses are setting up factories, production facilities in African countries, creating thousands of jobs. In Ethiopia, for instance, Turkish textile firms have invested heavily in Ethiopia, making Turkey one of the biggest foreign investors in the country's textile sector. Beyond construction and manufacturing, Turkey is also taking role in agriculture, energy, technology. With Africa's vast natural resources and Turkey's expertise in sustainable agriculture and renewable energy, there is a huge opportunities for collaboration in these areas as well.
Sorry to cut you there. I'll give you time to, continue. You just mentioned natural resources, and I think this is a very important point because we know that in Turkey as a country, there are lots of natural resources in this country. And then when we look at Africa too, Africa has a lot of natural resources, but unfortunately, they are not being, maximized to its full potential. So I do agree with you at that point that, in strengthening this relationship, not the use of the correct use, I would say, of natural natural resources is very, very important. So you can go on there, Mr. Burak.
Exactly. Yeah, you exactly right. And Turkish companies are already investing in these areas in the African countries, working, for example, on solar and wind energy projects in countries like Sudan, Ghana, helping to provide a clean and sustainable power to local communities. Apart from direct trade and investment, Turkey has also recently focused on strengthening its diplomatic and business connections in Africa. Back in 2002, Turkey only had 12 embassies in Africa. Today, as long as I know that, the number has grown to 44 embassies across the continent. So this diplomatic expansion has made it easier for business to connect, trade agreements to be signed, and investment opportunities to be explored. Here we should talk about also Turkey-Africa Business and Economic Forum. That is one of the best examples of the diplomatic and economic engagement. This event brings together business leaders, policymakers, investors from both sides, and they have opportunity to discuss trade opportunities and the partnerships. This type of forums have helped facilitate many successful business deals over the years. Of course, despite this progress, there are still challenges that we need to address. Dear Mercy,
I want him to continue from where he left. He was talking about, the challenges that we also face in, we've been talking about how this has grown, but what are also the challenges that we face? That's over to you, Mr. Burak.
Yes, thank you so much again. Yes, we need to talk about the challenges that need to be addressed also. Not everything is okay in the relationship between the continent and Turkey. One of the maybe one of the most important issues is logistics and transportation between African countries and Turkey. While Turkey has strong maritime connections with North Africa, but trade routes to sub-Saharan Africa are still developing, still in progress. We need more direct shipping and airline routes. That will definitely help increase trade efficiency. Another challenge is the competition from global players, and you try to touch on that. Africa is attracting interests from major economies like China, European Union, and United States. But Turkey has unique advantage among those players because it focuses on mutual benefit and long-term partnership, not just business transaction. Unlike some other global players, like we counted, Turkey emphasizes not only mining and natural resources, but also local employment, technology transfer, skill development, making its presence more sustainable and impactful in the continent. Looking ahead, I can tell that the potential for the future growth is extensive. I think sectors like digital transformation, e-commerce, renewable energy are areas where Turkey and African nations can collaborate even more. As African economies continue to develop, I believe we will see even stronger economic ties between Turkey and Africa in coming years. I would like to mention that our president, Mr. Erdogan, has been one of the most active global leaders in engaging with the continent. In fact, President Erdogan has visited more African countries than any other non-African leader in the world. As you know, since 2005, Turkey declared the Year of Africa. Our president, Mr. Erdogan, has made more than 40 visits to nearly 30 African countries. So these visits have been crucial in building trust, signing trade agreements, promoting Turkey as a long-term partner in Africa's economic and social social development as well. Let me also emphasize this. His approach is quite different from many other global players. Rather than a top-down aid model, Turkey emphasizes win and win cooperation. That means Turkey is not just investing in Africa, but also creating local employment, sharing expertise, and transferring technology. So those things will contribute definitely to for the welfare of the continent.
Definitely.
One of the most important milestones in Turkey-Africa relations was 2011 visit to Somalia. So that visit was very important from our president at a time when many world leaders avoided traveling to Somalia due to security concerns. Our president became the first non-African leader in the case to visit Mogadishu.
All right there, Mr. Burak. Thank you very much. I think that was also a very important point. We remember that we could recall that, President Erdogan was the one who stood between Somalia and Ethiopia, most recently bringing them together to, come together and settle their differences. Now, thank you very much for that. And Assistant Professor Burak Nedim Aktash, all the way from Beykoz University. I'm saying a very big thank you again to the both of you for joining us on the program today. I believe that these relations will continue, and we'll also have more time, in the future to talk about the development between Turkey and Africa. Thank you again for coming on the show. And with that, we have come to the end of this segment. We'll still continue the program while we talk about the African Diaspora Forum, which is coming on very soon in Istanbul, which is in Turkey. It is still me, your host, Mercy Bamigbola, and I'll see you